Welcome to The Forum, a weekly program of the Columbus Metropolitan Club where we cultivate conversations and connections that truly drive our region forward. My name is Sophia Pfiffner. I'm the president and CEO of the Columbus Metropolitan Club. And for those of you who are joining via live stream, we're coming to you from the beautiful National Veterans Memorial Museum in downtown Columbus. I want to take a moment to thank some of our sponsors for today: Burgess and Naipaul, the Franklin Soil and Water Conservation District, the Alliance for the Great Lakes, the Green Funds of the Columbus Foundation, the Nature Conservancy, the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation, and the Ohio Environmental Council. Thank you so much for your support of this conversation. I'd also like to thank Downtown Columbus Incorporated for providing complimentary parking for all of our guests today, and the presenting sponsors of our live stream, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation, and our live stream partner, the Columbus Dispatch. As you can tell, it takes a huge village to put on a conversation like this, and we are incredibly thankful for all of our supporters. But more importantly, we're thankful for this beautiful space, the National Veteran Memorial Museum, for hosting us, because we know that it takes a village. So thank you to all of our sponsors. All right, today's forward-looking conversation is Downstream decision. Is Ohio's water future at risk? Ohio's water is vital to our health and economy, but from toxic algae blooms to aging infrastructure, the challenges are mounting. Today's panelists will explore how we're tackling these issues and what's at stake as one of the state's most important clean water initiative faces deep funding cuts. To introduce our panel, please welcome Angela Blatt with today's sponsor, the Alliance for the Great Lakes. Angela, please welcome to the stage for CMC.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Perfect. My name is Angela Blatt, and I'm the Senior Agriculture Policy Manager with the Alliance for the Great Lakes. And I have the honor and privilege of introducing our panelists for today. But first, I've been asked to make a few remarks on the importance of Ohio's water resources to the Alliance and to Central Ohio. So the Alliance for the Great Lakes is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to protect our most precious resource, the fresh, clean, and natural waters of the Great Lakes. And to that end, the Alliance works on issues like reducing harmful algal blooms, stopping invasive species, fighting plastic pollution, and ensuring access to abundant, clean, and affordable drinking water. So in 2019, Ohio did something no other Great Lakes state has done yet, and that's make a significant financial investment and commitment to addressing nutrient pollution and upgrading infrastructure in a program called H2 Ohio. Today's discussion will highlight why continued sustained investment in a program like H2 Ohio is essential to ensuring the availability of clean and affordable fresh drinking water. And by putting resources towards increased adoption of on-farm practices to reduce nutrient runoff into Ohio's waterways, maintaining and installing wetlands that act as natural filters for those nutrients, and updating aging drinking water and sewer infrastructure, including replacing lead service pipes, Ohio can meet its water quality challenges, continue to grow, and ensure the availability of its most precious resource for all Ohioans. Protecting Lake Erie for future generations is a key part of the Alliance's mission, and a healthy Lake Erie improves the economy, quality of life, and public health for all Ohioans. Lake Erie provides drinking water to 3 million Ohio residents, supports over 150,000 jobs in shipping and fishing, generates $15 billion in tourism revenue each year, and brings $750 million per year in state and local taxes. Unfortunately, harmful algal blooms caused by nutrient pollution threaten the health of Lake Erie and the people that depend on it. You may remember in 2014, nearly 500,000 Toledoans were left without safe drinking water because of toxins from the bloom that got into the drinking water supply. Public water systems continue to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on the capital upgrades, treatment, and monitoring necessary to deal with harmful algal blooms, translating to higher water bills for downstream residents. But harmful algal blooms and nutrient pollution are not unique to Lake Erie, and ensuring that the integrity of water quality and quantity is critical for Central Ohio too. The region's surface and groundwater resources have made it an attractive place for businesses and individuals to locate. In one of the fastest growing regions in the country, Central Ohio also faces challenges with nutrient pollution and aging water and sewer infrastructure. So to share more with us about these challenges and also opportunities, I'll now introduce our panelists for today. First, we have Dontavius Jarrells, Ohio State House Representative for the 1st District, also happens to be my district. We also have Paula Powell, Senior Vice President of Research and Development for the Scotts Miracle-Gro Company. Adam Sharp, Executive Vice President of the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation. And Bill Stanley, State Director of the Nature Conservancy in Ohio. And now I'd like to bring up our host, Carol Kaufman, who is the CEO of the Ohio Environmental Council. Karen, oh my gosh, sorry, Carol. Carol, welcome to the stage, and we look forward to today's conversation.
Thanks, Angela. I can answer to Karen, that's fine. Well, I am so excited for this conversation today. I think if I had the opportunity to ask everyone in this room, what is your favorite body of water? You would probably have an answer. And for me, I would answer it's the Big Darby Creek. So I grew up here in Central Ohio. I have so many childhood memories of playing in the creek, finding crawdads, hiking along its headwaters. And so that really developed into a lifelong passion. Excuse me. And I've worked for my whole career, really, to protect water from the source to its tap. So that's why I'm really excited to talk with each of these experts on this topic of water. Why is it important? Is it important to everyone? And then what do we need to do to protect it? So to get us started, I'd like each of you to share with me, why is water important for you personally as well as professionally? Who wants to start?
I can start, I guess. Hey, everybody, I'm Bill Stanley, as they said. It's really good to be with you all, and boy, it's kind of like picking your favorite child, which you can't really do, favorite body of water for me. But yeah, I grew up really canoeing, paddling, fishing, and my kids and my wife and our family, we would vacation every year. In the summer, we would camp at Kelly's Island on Lake Erie, and that was a very formative experience for my kids. And for me, that's just an incredible body of water. The Great Lakes are something that cannot be taken for granted. There's nothing like them that exists in the world, honestly. So that would be number one. Darby Creek is close behind, and Scioto is not bad either. The Scioto runs right by our office, so I see that every day. So that's a body of water I'm very familiar with. But yeah, it's been a lot to me to be able to work on water quality in Ohio, to see improvement. In my lifetime, and water quality has been very rewarding. I mean, just think about even right here in the city, the Scioto and the Scioto Mile, and all the restoration work that's gone on there, the removal of the low-head dams, improvement in water quality to turn what, had been seen as kind of a place to put things that you didn't want to deal with, now has become a real source of recreation and a place for all of us to appreciate and enjoy, and really an attractor for the community. So. Those are reasons I just love working on water. We all care about water, and my favorite bodies of water. I mentioned 3. Sorry, Carol.
A simple one for me. As a farmer in Southern Ohio and representing the state's largest farm organization, we can't grow food without water, period. And especially these last couple of years, we've been reminded of that quite a bit as we've dealt with water and or the lack thereof. So if you ask me what my favorite body of water is, for me, pretty simple answer, since we haven't had a single drop of rain the last 2 Augusts on our farm, it would be any water is my favorite drop of water. I'll take any water. So we do, I do represent the Ohio Farm Bureau. We have farmers in all 88 counties growing everything that Ohio produces. And water is the lifeblood, period, right? Whether it's quantity or quality, whether it's having to manage it or having to irrigate with it, control it in lots of different ways and utilize that resource, right, that we have in abundance here in Ohio, which is a terrific resource for this state. It is something that our folks cherish, nourish, and we have to manage. And it has to be something that we continue to manage as a state. So we really appreciate that. My favorite bottle of water personally, though, if I did have to get pressed, would be the Ohio River, since I'm a Southern Ohio guy. And we spend a lot of days, people people underestimate the Ohio River and the beauty of the Ohio River. We boat on the Ohio River every summer, and a lot of friends and farmers down along the river who farm down along that river in that valley, and it is absolutely stunningly beautiful if you've not been down through vast parts of the Ohio River.
I agree. It's hard to decide one body of water. Transparently, I am not an Ohio native, although at this point I think I've lived in Ohio more than I lived in Pennsylvania. But my absolute favorite body of water is Pumpkin Run Creek, which is a tiny tributary that flows into the Monongahela River. And every time I talk to Carol, I learn how much we share similarities. Hunting for crawdads, playing in the creek as a kid was something that was a unique part of my growing up, and from both a personal and professional standpoint, that's why water is important to me. I think getting outside and being part of nature is abundantly important, and that's one of the ways that Scott's Miracle-Gro is trying to be part of the conversation around water. I think as a scientist, water quality is ridiculously important to me because I want to leave the earth better than the way I found it. And so we spend every day with the scientists at Miracle-Gro trying to figure out how we can make the world a better place. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. How you doing today? Well, I can't swim, so anything that's shallow is a good body of water for me. I am really honored and privileged to be here. All jokes aside, as a kid from Cleveland who was adopted by Columbus, I am proud to represent many of you in the State House. And my lived experience growing up in Cleveland was pretty profound. I grew up at a time where there were many families who were struggling to have water come out their tap. So water affordability was not just something that we talked about, it's something we experienced. And then on top of that, the water that came out the tap was not the best. We had a lot of pollution in Lake Erie, as many of you may know back in the day. And the truth is, there were families who got sick. And so for me, it is a personal experience of mine as a lead poison survivor that I bring that lived experience every day to the State House to make sure that we all believe that water is a human right, clean water is a human right, and ultimately water affordability is a human right. And I try to do my best to make sure that happens every day through policies and laws that will outlive all of us. And so I'm excited to be here on this panel, and I'm excited to drop some heat on the floor for you all and some stats, what we're doing in the State House. Thank y'all.
Wonderful responses from all of you, very inspiring. And Rep. Jarrells, I want to follow up. You're talking about your work at the State House, and you're an incredible champion on these issues of water affordability, water quality for all Ohioans. But I'm curious, can you tell us a little bit more? How is the water conversation perceived there? You know, so many issues that you can think of are considered a red or a blue issue. Maybe they're highly political, but what about water? How are your colleagues thinking about it?
Well, in my first term in office, for folks, I've been in the legislature now for 5 years. And when I first came in, I leveraged my story as a lead poison survivor to really talk about what is it like to be a child who experiences lead poisoning, and what we have to do to address lead on our walls, lead underneath in our ground, through our lead lines, our service lines where water gets carried through. And the first thing that we were able to do was myself and Tom Patton, we were able to pass a bill that got into House Bill 45. It was $150 million of ARPA funds that was invested in water quality programs. The truth is, it is not a red and blue issue, as you said, Carol. It is a human right. And whether you're living in rural Ohio or suburban Ohio or urban Ohio, every time you turn on your water, every time you hose your kids off during the summer, every time you are wanting to drink from the tap, it should be clean water. And that is not an argument that many people say, well, yeah, some people should have dirty water. And so the question is how we get there. And a lot of the bills that I've been able to introduce with Representative Monica Robb Blaisdell and so many others related to water have been bipartisan. We've had other Republicans come up to me and say, I never experienced or understood what lead poisoning is, but I know now what it is and why we need to fix it. And so the conversation that we've had in the legislature have been fairly good. Now, anytime you deal with money in the State House, you're dealing with some folks who have different ideas of how we invest those finite dollars. But I try my best to give the human experience as to what's the cost of doing nothing. And the cost of not investing in water quality is kids that are poisoned, kids that have cognitive deficiencies, and ultimately communities that will suffer. And so as long as we are really talking about the human conditions of people, it's always been a bipartisan initiative.
That's great. Great to hear. I love to hear examples like that. Thank you. So we're talking about the H2 Ohio program today, and I think we need to sort of set the stage. Before we can leap into the future, we need to look at the past. How did this program come about? What is it doing? And then we'll talk about maybe a little bit of what it has accomplished. So I want us all to jump in the Wayback Machine together. And let's go back in time, about 10, 12 years. And I'm wondering if Adam, Bill, others could paint a picture for us of what the conditions were on the ground in terms of water quality concerns in this state.
Yeah, so jump back to 2014, 13, and you talk about the water quality, the algal bloom in particular, that issue, right? Because there's a number of issues we could jump into with water quality and water in general, but water quality, the Lake Erie algal blooms that were mentioned in the introduction. So as that was happening, what you had even prior to that, about 10 years earlier than that, was heavy investment from the agriculture community starting to look at, in particular, nutrient management. Are there different ways and new ways to deal with nutrient management for a whole host of reasons? Water quality is one of those, for sure, but also pure economics on the farming side. Fertilizers cost money. It costs a lot of money, and we want to make sure that we're utilizing it as best as we can for that plant uptake. So there was already heavy investment happening, but 2014, the algal blooms, and the one thing I just want to really say here is, especially as I look around this room and we talk about the origins of H2 Ohio, I see a lot of good friends and partners right here in this room and right here on this panel that came together as a state and said, we're not going to just toss hand grenades at each other anymore on issues and not disagree. We're actually going to roll up our sleeves together and work on solving a problem. And I sat down with Josh Knights, Bill's predecessor, and Bill was on the team at that point as well. And we had a conversation over lunch about what can we do to just solve the problem. What can we do? And we started laying out ideas. And those ideas, we started bringing in more and more folks, and it ultimately culminated in the Healthy Water Ohio Coalition. Over 200 people gave input into this. Many of the groups that are sitting here, Scott's was one of the original partners. Anheuser-Busch was the original partner. Ohio Environmental Council, the Nature Conservancy, Farm Bureau, all of our commodity groups, Lake Erie Shores and Islands tourism groups, all of these different industry sectors and community sectors came together and said, let's just figure out how to solve this problem. So we came up with this concept. It was put dollars into three pockets. One is agriculture, one is communities, and one is natural resources. So those that idea of three buckets was something that we forwarded, started talking with the legislature about. We started talking with the governor about, and huge hats off to Governor DeWine and the General Assembly as a whole, Republican and Democrat, because they saw that there was a real opportunity for all these groups who had come together with some resources and the right type of programming to make a real difference. And people did it in this state. It is a model I don't know of, and I work across this country with a lot of groups, and I used to work for US EPA, so I've seen a lot of different programs come and go across the country. This is one with staying power that has results and is delivered. And it's delivered with a coalition of communities that typically don't always agree on things very well. But we have done that in Ohio. That is a path we have crossed, and it's really fun when I go around the country and other states go, how'd you guys do that? How'd you guys secure the kind of resources, put together the type of programming, and build the type of coalition that you guys have built in Ohio? So I'll just say, for one, I'm really proud of that. And I'm proud of everybody in this room who's been a part of that. Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. That was great. And I appreciate you pointing out the role of the Nature Conservancy. And I remember those times, too. Like, the algae blooms were already happening before the Toledo water crisis. And so it was on our radar screen. We needed to do something about it. Credit to Farm Bureau for pulling together this group of people to have a conversation. At the Nature Conservancy, we actually are a global organization. We work in 83 countries in every state. And I know from my perspective, one of the things that we brought to the table was some ideas from outside of the state, to be honest, on what we call water funds. And one of the things that I think the Nature Conservancy recognizes, wetlands hadn't really been a part of the conversation on how to improve water quality in Ohio. We talk a lot about farm practices. Water treatment facilities and combined sewer overflows were kind of the major issues. Those are all really important. what we recognized is that there was an opportunity for us to restore wetlands in places that they'd already been existing, to restore them in a way and in places that could capture nutrients before it enters the larger water bodies. Think about wetlands like kidneys. They clean water, and so we needed to put some wetlands back on the landscape to capture those nutrients and that runoff, process them, hold it there, and store it in the wetland, which, by the way, also has so many other benefits with biodiversity benefits. You've got waterfowl, you have insects, plants, you have people really enjoying these areas for recreation, whether it's hunting or bird watching or whatever it might be. Wetlands are a tremendous resource that we can use effectively, not only for habitat, which is kind of at the core of our mission at the Nature Conservancy, but to provide other benefits to people like water quality treatment. We were able to kind of bring that to the table along with the Farm Bureau and the farm practices, which also are very important, and we agree with those, and the natural infrastructure, the gray infrastructure solutions like the lead pipe replacement. What a strong coalition. And one other plug for wetlands before I give up the mic here. They don't care where the nutrients come from. It could come from a septic system, it could come from a farmland, it could come from a combined sewer overflow. The wetlands will treat the effluent or the nutrient from any of those sources. So it's kind of one part of the solution that can really work to improve water quality regardless of what the source of the water problem would be. And again, not just thinking about the treatment at the end, but also how do you protect that source water? Protecting that source water reduces treatment costs, which Adam got at. It also improves recreational viability, not only within the site where you're doing the wetland restoration, but downstream. And we have a study that's just about completed. I've seen the early results, and it's suggesting that for every $1 of investment from H2 Ohio that's gone into wetlands, $8 is returned in terms of benefit to people in Ohio. So it's a great investment, and we're really happy to be a part of the three-pronged solution.
So we can see, Bill, you're very passionate about wetlands.
Yes.
So what I'm learning is wetlands do a lot. They don't just sit there. It's not Shrek's swamp. It actually is really important for Ohio and for our water quality. I like that. It's a kidney. It's nature's kidney. All right, so you've sold me on wetlands. I want to go back to the fertilizer conversation that you mentioned, Adam. You were talking about farmers and managing those nutrients, the fertilizer that they put on their land. But I feel like we need to better understand that connection between what's happening on the land and how does that impact lakes and rivers. And Paula, you're a scientist on the panel. And you work for a company that also produces fertilizers and sells them to consumers. So talk to us about what is in that fertilizer and why is that something to manage for water quality?
Absolutely. So, back in, I believe it was 2011, Scott's made the decision to remove phosphorus from all of our lawn maintenance fertilizers. And that was a pretty big deal for us, right? Phosphorus is an important resource for growing deep roots, but it's also something that's actually quite in abundance in our environment today. So it was something that the plants could live without, and we recognized early on that taking that out of maintenance applications would further help support the cause. We got involved in some of the early work, as mentioned, largely because we saw an opportunity to make sure that we were getting the right message out there. And I think education is so fundamentally important, and that's something the Farm Bureau has been very involved in as well, in how we manage resources. You mentioned the cost of fertility. It's something that is quintessential to growing good plants, but it's also something that has to be managed. And I think some of the development work that we as a company have done for consumers, right, a little different than farmers who go through applicator training and whatnot, we have to make something that consumers can use easy, readily, and not put things where they do not belong, right? So we've spent a long time doing education and stewardship on how to develop the right technology and the right products so that we do not contribute to runoff, so that we do not, nothing makes me angrier than to see someone has applied fertilizer to their home lawn and left the fertilizer on the sidewalk. Educating people that you need to sweep that up, and all of our products, say that, for example, is very important. But turf, much like wetlands, my passion is turf and gardens, and turf is so fundamentally important as a sponge for heat, as a filter for pollutants. And so, you know, I think for us, making sure that people understand that lawns and landscapes are a valuable asset to the environment and to environmental protection is something we are trying to educate a lot around.
Thank you. So I think what I'm hearing is turf or any kind of buffer strips around farmland, they play a really important role. They're a little bit different than a wetland, but they also have a role in capturing the fertilizer, the nutrients, the water, filtering it, and then making sure that whatever water goes into the waterway is safe and clean and isn't going to cause problems there. You want to say something, Adam?
Yeah, if you want me to just mention a little bit, but you know, on fertilizer, N, P, and K, right? The three critical nutrients for growing plants, for growing crops: soybeans, corn, wheat, grass.
What are those?
You know, everybody knows those, I hope, right? We know those what they are. Keeping them on the soil, incorporating them into the soil. What are the best practices? So Paula talked about, hey, when you're treating your lawn, you know, don't leave it on the sidewalk where it could run off pretty quickly. Very similar situations in the field, except we're dealing with vast spaces, and you're putting on a small amount of nutrient, but onto vast spaces that are under the pressure from weather and wind and water and increasingly more powerful rains. 50% increase in 1-inch rains in the last 30 years. When we look at northwestern Ohio and you look at that vast amount of space and you're trying to deal with these increased, very impactful rains, it comes to managing those nutrients. We want to keep them on the soil, and we figured out new ways and better ways to do so. But it also comes back to simple things like soil testing, but doing it even more aggressively. So part of what H2 Ohio has been able to do is encourage farmers to do more frequent testing on what we call grid sampling. So more soil probes being sunk, so you know very clearly where your nutrient levels are in any given spot in your fields. And then with technology, we can do variable rate application. Variable rate application means as you're moving that fertilizer spreader across the field, it's not just throwing out, fertilizer. It's not just throwing it out anymore, right? It's changing rates as it goes across the field, and it's putting some here, and then it's stopping over there, and then it may be adding a little bit more over here, and it's changing rates as it goes. So it's putting down according to what the different soil needs are in a field, not as a full field, as segments of a field. So as technologies improve, we've been able to utilize those technologies to manage fertilizer. Again, it's dollars. How much dollars is it since 2020? Phosphorus in particular, and its main form of DAP, has tripled in price in the last 5 years, tripled in price. We have the highest input costs in agriculture right now than we have had in my lifetime. I'm 53. Highest prices we've ever had on inputs. My table full of farmers up here can tell you, if you want to talk to them about where we're at with input prices right now compared to commodity prices. Commodity prices are in the tank. They're some of our worst prices. We're making right now on our soybeans the same price we made when I was born in 1972. Same price, but the input prices have just gone like this. So when you're talking about challenges and farmers, managing fertilizer is a big deal for a lot of reasons. Water quality, absolutely, but economics, absolutely as well. So the nice thing is those things, two things do go hand in glove, and it's been a very big part of H2 Ohio in those conversations.
It's good to know. And I was thinking of this idea that, when you're using something, if you think a little bit is good, maybe more is better. That's not the case. That's what I'm hearing from you, getting the right amount.
That's not the case.
I think we can all take that away. All right, so I want to shift us now. We don't have too much time left, unbelievably. We're already, time is moving fast. So I want to talk about this H2 Ohio program, and you mentioned it has three parts to it. There's the part that is funding community water projects, things like dam removals, lead service line replacements, lots of, helping folks get access to and protect access to clean, safe drinking water. And then there's the ag component of the program that you've been describing very beautifully, Adam. There's also the natural resource protection, wetland restoration work. So this we went in the Wayback Machine. There were challenges. There was really strong consensus from all kinds of corners of the state that we needed to do something. The program gets stood up, I think, 2019. All credit to Governor DeWine and the legislature for believing in this project. But now we're 6 years in. So what has it accomplished in these three buckets? And Rep. Jarrells, do you want to say something?
Well, it's accomplished a lot, which is why I think the sustainability of the fund is so important. For folks who may not know, I sit on Finance Committee, and we had a lot of debates about the funding of H2 Ohio. And if you have not read the latest budget that passed and was signed into law on July 1, I'll tell you what happened. We cut H2 Ohio funds dramatically, about $52 to $60 million annually of H2 Ohio funds are gone on an annual basis. And what does that mean? It means like 73% of EPA's H2 Ohio funds were removed. About 55% of the Department of Natural Resources funds were removed, and about 12% of the Department of Agriculture's funds were removed. So the watershed protections, the Lead Line Replacement Act, the lead prevention programs, all of those funds or those line items were zeroed out. That means that for the protections that we were able to stand up since 2019, moving into 2026, 2027, and beyond, we're going to have less money invested in our communities that keep our families safe, keep our farmlands vibrant, and ultimately protects the health and wellness of our state. And so the advocacy that we need to do as a collective, I think, is now more than ever before. And so if we are excited about the fact that we were able to put money to farms to help reduce the amount of fertilizer that gets into our streams, then that program is being decimated. We need to talk about it. If you believe that we should have been doing more to ensure that families get clean water into their homes, well, guess what? We need to do a lot more work on that front because we don't have any funds to fund that program, or at least less. If you believe that we should be thinking about watershed protections, well, we need your voice. And so while there's been critical achievements made through the H2 Ohio Fund, it currently is being decimated by this budget. And we need your help, if you believe in water quality, to help us share the truths to our colleagues about the importance of investing in H2 Ohio.
I just give you a couple numbers. Let's just talk straight out numbers. So when you look at the agriculture portion, I'll just speak to that piece. The representative did a good job on the community piece. It's only been 4 growing seasons. So 6 years, but only 4 growing seasons for us that the money's actually been able to, those cost share dollars have come out. And again, I want to emphasize cost share dollars, right? So the farmer has to put something into this too. So that has been a critical part of the agricultural portion. And what we've seen, there's a term, DRP, dissolved reactive phosphorus. That's the stuff that probably gets the most credit for causing the algal blooms. So that's phosphorus as a broken down form as it moves down the Maumee River toward Lake Erie. So the goals of reducing that amount of DRP, just in 4 growing seasons, we've already seen a 10% reduction, That's quite a nice piece to start with. Interestingly, on the spring flows, though, down the Maumee, the last 3 or 4 years now, since we've been putting these practices in place, you've seen as much as a 30 to 40% reduction in DRP coming down the Maumee River. That's huge. That is huge. So the potential is huge. We got to keep working on it. We got to keep funding it because we're seeing the progress in real numbers. We've seen a 33% reduction in the amount of fertilizer being applied. A 33% reduction. That's a cost savings and a good thing on water quality management. So good pieces there that are happening too. We're actually now, with crop uptake, we're at a net drawdown of phosphorus in the soil in this state, a net drawdown. So we're applying less phosphorus. The plants are taking it up. We need it. We got to manage it because the plants still need it. But we also now know where it is. We know how much is there, and we're managing our crops toward that to uptake that and put down less. So we're at a net drawdown. So those are all really good numbers that show what H2 investment has actually done on the ground.
I am getting a signal. We're going to be moving to our Q&A in just a moment. So if you have a burning question online or in the room, you can start to get that ready. I'm going to give you a chance, Bill. We have so much to say. but I did need to give that cue. It is a longstanding tradition here that folks who attend have the opportunity to ask questions as well. So Adam, you mentioned there's anywhere from 10 up to 20 or 30% reduction depending on the time of year, depending on where it's being measured. And I just want to remind all of us there is a goal that the state has set of a 40% reduction of this phosphorus that we're talking about going into the lake. So it seems like this program is working to help us make progress toward that goal. We're not there yet, but the things that the state has undertaken to do are having an impact. And Bill, do you want to share a little bit about wetlands again? And then I'm going to have one final question. Okay, go ahead.
Can't help myself. Yeah, so I loved a lot of the points that Adam was making there, and one of the things he mentioned was plants take up phosphorus, for example. So think about dissolved reactive phosphorus, which is what he mentioned as a major culprit, and think about that dissolved reactive phosphorus getting into a drainage ditch off of next to an agricultural field. Imagine it going straight into Lake Erie and causing harmful algae blooms. And then the alternative would be having a wetland to intercept that. The wetland, guess what? It has plants in it. The plants take up that dissolved reactive phosphorus. The water that ends up going downstream is left cleaner without, at least a portion of that DRP. So these things work together really, really well. And I don't think it's a coincidence. We've been investing in wetlands for a much shorter period of time, frankly, than we've been investing in farm practices, just through H2 Ohio program. That reduction that he's talking about, that's happened since the H2 Ohio program has been into place. So we really need that suite of activities to be successful moving forward.
All right, so I'm going to give one final question. Again, if you have questions, type them into the chat online or line up behind Doug over there waving his hand. So I'm going to ask each of you to give a brief answer to this final question, which is circling all the way back to the title of our conversation today. Is Ohio's water future at risk? Why or why not? Let's see. Paula, why don't you start?
I think that we need to continue to advocate for clean water. I think we need to continue to advocate for better usage of our water. And I think that if we do those things, we can turn the tide. I think that it's important to understand how our daily lives go about influencing the water and our water quality. I think, Representative said it well. This is a human issue. It's not a political issue. It's not a company issue. It is everyone's issue. And I think that it's fundamentally important that we continue to put efforts towards science and making science-based decisions, which is one of the reasons that through our national partner network and the Scott's Miracle-Gro Foundation, we continue to fund grants to help protect our water. So,
thank you. Rep. Jarrells?
Well, I'm gonna hit you with some more numbers, y'all. We have 745,000 lead service lines that are still active in Ohio, making us one of the top states in the nation that literally uses lead lines to carry water into our homes, our daycare centers, apartment complexes, you name it, senior centers. In Cleveland, lead poisoning amongst children is some of the highest in the country. The only place that has more kids who are lead poisoned is in Chicago. When I think about where we are today and where we're headed, without investment and critical prioritization of water, we're going to see more families, unfortunately, succumb to, one, having water that it costs more, two, lesser quality of water, and three, in some cases, no water at all. And I think we have to have an honest conversation about, what does it mean to truly say that water is a human right? I believe that it should be the most affordable and the most abundant. But I also realize that it is a finite commodity. We do not have all the water we need. And when we look at Columbus region that uses 157 million gallons of water a day, with places like Intel that's coming online using water, and all our databases that are using more water, the truth is water is becoming less and less of a commodity, even for places like Columbus. And so without investment and prioritization, we're going to see the least of these impacted. And that's why I need your help. we need your help, not just me, my colleagues on the Republican side too, to help us really draw the line of where do we stand as a state in the investments of water quality programs, because ultimately this is how we build an Ohio that we all deserve.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad the representative mentioned water quantity because we have been blessed, right, in this state with a lot of water. But quantity is becoming as much of an issue as quality as we talk about land use management and development and the different things that are happening. So as I look to the future, yes, I think that is a big concern that we have in the state, that a lot of good things happening in the state, but we need to make sure that we're paying attention to water quantity issues as well as quality issues moving forward. I would also mention too that we've always said since the beginning in agriculture with this work is we're going to do our part. We expect others to do theirs too, and they are. But I do worry about the cost and expense when you get into septic and sewer. Those are two spaces where we know we have a lot of challenges, and those are big, expensive systems. Whether you're talking about a community system that's big, gray infrastructure and it costs a lot of money to deal with, or a septic system in somebody's backyard in Appalachia who can't afford to put in a $30,000 system. We have a lot of septic and sewer problems in this state, and I was very glad to see the bonding measure that did get passed back in the spring that's putting dollars into that big, gray infrastructure that Bill talked about earlier with sewage treatment. But we have to really pay attention to sewer and septic, especially for homeowners. We see this in Toledo. We see it in a number of communities around the state, small communities, large communities. It's a big investment for homeowners and for communities to deal with. And it's a big challenge still. So I look at that as a piece. On the ag side, in general, we feel very good about our trajectory. We feel good about where we're at, the practices in place, the things that we're doing, academia and the others we're working with to make sure that we've got the right practices. So I feel good in that space as long as we continue to have the dollars to help us continue to do the things that we need to do.
These are great. I'm going to give you just a few seconds. You round us out, and then we're going to go to the Q&A, Bill. Final thoughts.
I don't know if I can do a few seconds, but I'll try to make it quick. And I'm actually not going to just talk about wetlands because, first of all, I want to say having clean water it's a moral issue. And I appreciate what Representative Jarrells said. We all deserve clean water. Frankly, the fish and everything else deserve clean water as well. And it's not an optional investment we need to make. Is our future at risk in Ohio for water? It depends on what we do. I think we're at that point where we need to make a decision. These investments need to continue. That's incredibly important. We have increasing stresses on our water. Think about data centers, water use for cooling, and the fact that this state is so attractive primarily, or not primarily, but partly because of our water resources. It's a big part of what makes this state attractive. We need to make sure that that stays a part of who we are as a state. It remains an asset, and it's going to take water investments. Is it at risk? Depends on us.
Well said. Thank you all. All right, Doug, I'm going to turn things over to you for some questions.
Carol, thank you so much, and thank you to today's panelists for a great conversation. If you have a question for today's panelists, please do join us here at the microphone. As Carol mentioned, if you're watching online, type your question in the chat. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can today. Great questions at CMC always have two things in common. They can be asked in about 60 seconds or less. And what punctuation mark does a question always end with? Ends with a question mark. Yes, they do. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to launch us off with this one. I'm actually going to combine two from the live stream audience that are similar. Dean Narciso at the Columbus Dispatch and Marilyn Brown are both asking kind of about the same thing. Can you comment on the growing crush of data centers and potential computer chip manufacturing at Intel and how they will strain the water supply and water rates? To what extent should Ohio businesses, especially those that rely heavily on water resources, be required to invest in protecting them?
Who wants to take that? I think Rep. Jarrells. Go ahead.
Well, I mentioned it a little bit here. Again, the Columbus region is using 157 million gallons of water per day, and that will grow as the data centers become live. And the truth is, we have a finite commodity in Columbus. And so it is incredibly important for businesses to think about recycling initiatives of the current water usage that they have. I do know that many of them are thinking about that. I don't want to say that they're not. But the truth is, we also are a growing city. We have millions of people that are coming to Columbus and the surrounding neighborhoods and surrounding cities, which is going to put an additional strain on our water. And so what I will say is that water conservation is not just for these big businesses, it's for all of us. Every single one of us should be thinking critically about how we use water, because if we don't, we're going to run out of it, or it's going to be much more expensive to get. And I can't tell you, I mean, property taxes are already too high, and energy costs are increasing. To then add water usage rates going up is going to put a strain on all of us, particularly our most vulnerable. And so it is up to all of us, businesses, communities, neighbors, to think about water in a different way so that we all have it.
I would add, I think there's a lot of smart people working on this now, which gives me a lot of hope. And you know, my organization, the Ohio Environmental Council, is really interested in how can we help local communities in Central Ohio, but beyond, make decisions about how their water resources, their land is going to be developed and utilized so that it can really meet all of their goals. It can protect the natural world and make sure they're providing for their residents. So, excellent question.
Thank you. Kathy Fox with Community Strategy Partners. My question goes back to a point that Bill made about every $1 invested from H2 Ohio funds yields $8 of value, and that may have been tied to wetlands, I'm not sure. How do we, and what would you say and what should we say to the Ohio General Assembly when they've just reduced the amount of funding available to capture that value and protect our water resources?
I mean, I can start by saying that that research is so new, it hasn't even been published yet, but it will be this month. So that was one of the purposes of kind of doing that research, is try to understand the return on investment from the investments in H2 Ohio. And I will say that, you know, they also looked at agriculture, and there's a good ROI there as well. And we'll release more information on that study. But I think that's a part of what we need to talk about, Kathy, and thanks for your question. And I don't know if others have other comments.
I just mentioned a group that we didn't talk about was the Ohio Ag Conservation Initiative, OACI. It's a group that was put together alongside of H2 Ohio. So as the state put dollars into H2 Ohio, in the ag portion, we said, you know, we want to make sure we're tracking what the results are. So that's why we have the data that I shared a minute ago. But also, next year will be the first assessment where we've been going around each of these sub-units of the Western Lake Erie Basin and establishing a baseline of what conservation practices are being put in place and what farmers are doing. We're going to go back this next year, back to those first ones we set a baseline at, to measure that progress. So we're going to constantly have data as we move along through this investment that the state has made in water quality in the ag space. There's also good data in the other two areas as well. And that's an important part of this. So I appreciate you raising that, because I think as we move through this, it's not just write a check. It's write a check, sure. Let's be smart about where we're spending the dollars, and then let's track it and show the progress. Part of H2 Ohio also that we appreciate is that it is a set up a system that evolves. So in the agriculture space, we identified about 10 different major practices that a farmer could partake in that we knew had promise to reduce phosphorus loading, had promise, but wasn't necessarily always proven. What we're doing is we're going through this process of year on year of these activities, is looking at the data to make sure that the different programs that we're putting in place in the field are working. If they're not, we'll rotate them out and we'll bring new ones in. But part of it is the dynamic nature as well of these dollars. We're not just saying, yep, this should work. We're going to write a check for this particular practice and just hope that happens. Hope it shows progress. We're measuring it and we're rotating those practices. Bring in the new ones that are working better, get rid of the ones that aren't showing as much results. So I think that's an important part of this that people need to understand. It's a good use of the dollars, right? And we're tracking those dollars to make sure that Ohioans know that we're being accountable to them.
One more thing, just real quickly. I think when we're talking to Representative in the General Assembly, there's data, we have data basically showing from polling that the people of Ohio support this program. We had recent polling data suggested that 60% would support long-term funding on the order of $200 million a year to maintain this type of work going forward. And that cut across Republican, Democrat, independents, rural and urban voters. So this is truly an issue that does unite us around our water needs, and so I think that's important for our decision makers to know as well.
And if I could just add one thing, the truth of the matter is there's a lot of education that still needs to be done with our legislative colleagues around water. When I go and talk to my colleagues, as you all know, there's a fresh crop of new members that come in every GA. And many of them may have never even heard about lead poisoning, or maybe never even heard about watershed or ephemeral streams. These are concepts that are foreign to folks who may not be a farmer, for example. And so I think it's important that we are constantly communicating with legislators about these priorities and bringing the data to bear to say this investment is going to make an economic impact on the state as a whole. Case in point, for every $1 that we invest in lead service line replacement, we get $31 of value returned to us. That's a report, right? And so when you talk about how do we make sure that we are selling to our colleagues, to my colleagues, to your members of the General Assembly, is about showing the economic impact. And so these stories, the lived experience of people who unfortunately get the short end of the stick, which means that we're not doing enough to invest in them in their neighborhoods, and what happens when we do invest, all of those conversations help us advocate, particularly the champions in the room, to say that we all need to do our part to get these things done.
Thank you. We have about 3 minutes left for a final quick question.
Good afternoon. As someone who has the pleasure of running a family beef cattle farm on the Ohio River, I heard a lot today about the stressors of data centers and fertilizers. What I did not hear about was oil and gas and fracking. And I actually did research last year about the number of our wells in Ohio that have had leaks, have had remediation, and I'm wondering if somebody could speak to that, please.
Listen, it is an issue that we've had a number of constituents and advocacy organizations that have come to my office to talk about that issue, that the leaks that are happening from the fracking is getting into well water, and it's very costly for these families to navigate. And the pollutants, most folks don't know that their water is polluted until it's too late. Most folks don't know that. I don't know if I ask any one of you in the room, maybe, when was the last time you tested your water? Most of you think that when you turn on your water, what's coming out the spigot is clean. The truth is, for many families, they really don't know. And then when their child gets sick is when they begin to see, wait, I have to actually do some research to figure out why my child's getting sick. And so there's been a lot of conversations in my office and colleagues. I have a couple of members, like, for example, Representative Tristan Rader introduced a bill related to that very issue. And so there's a lot of conversations, but it's going to take, again, a coalition of leaders, both Republican, Democrat, agnostic, independent, don't have a party or side. We all got to come together and say that issue is something that we need to address because it does impact families, particularly in the suburban and rural communities, and we do have to address it.
I'll just add real quick that the Nature Conservancy, we have we're on record basically saying there should not be any fracking going on under our state lands, our public lands, our parks. That's something that we feel strongly about. And by the way, I think I said 60% public support. It's actually 70%. So I want to correct my comment that I made earlier. Thanks, everybody.
All right, we are just about out of time. It was an excellent question and a good example of how you can't really put these things in silos. You know, water and energy and natural resource management, all of these things work together to create the world in which we want to live and thrive alongside nature. So thank you all for just a wonderful conversation. And I am going to be turning things over to Mary Tarosi from the Nature Conservancy for some final remarks.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much to the Columbus Metropolitan Club for the opportunity to sponsor and participate in this important conversation that really impacts all of us. The Nature Conservancy is a global nonprofit that has a presence in all 50 states and more than 80 countries. We are a nonpartisan, science-based organization that seeks to conserve the lands and waters on which all life depends. Ensuring Ohio's precious freshwater resources are protected is an essential priority to safeguard access to clean water, healthy habitats, and robust economic opportunities. The Nature Conservancy is proud to advance water quality through nature-based solutions and by supporting agricultural practices like those discussed today. We know that the statewide effort to restore wetlands, streams, and riparian river corridors and decrease nutrient runoff are critical to achieving our water quality goals. We've also heard about the importance of addressing our water infrastructure, replacing lead pipes, and upgrading aging sewer systems to address issues at the source. These programs have been made possible through the historic successes of Ohio's public-private funding support through H2O Ohio. Funding is needed to help with planning and implementing these projects. Maintaining public support is essential to keeping these programs fully funded, and this presents an opportunity for individual action to share support for H2O Ohio and other water programs with our policymakers. As you heard, if you want to learn more about the economic impact of H2O Ohio, the Nature Conservancy is in the process of concluding a research project that will provide estimates of the benefits of the program to Ohio's communities. We're really excited to share the results, so keep an eye out for that. And finally, thank you so much to today's forum sponsors, Burgess & Nyepel, the Franklin Soil and Water Conservation District, the Alliance for the Great Lakes, the Green Funds of the Columbus Foundation, the Nature Conservancy, the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation, and the Ohio Environmental Council. And also, I just want to thank all the farmers and conservationists out in the audience. I know we have a lot of our peers out there, so thank you to all of you as well. We're very grateful to Downtown Columbus Incorporated for today's complimentary parking and to the presenting sponsor of our live stream, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation, and our live stream partner, the Columbus Dispatch. Thank you also to the National Veterans Memorial and Museum for hosting us, and our special appreciation to our panelists, Dontavius Jarrells, Paula Powell, Adam Sharp, Bill Stanley, and our host, Carol Kaufman. If you're ready to keep learning more about today's forum topic, our wonderful partners at the Columbus Metropolitan Library recommend reading The Last Drop, Solving the World's Water Crisis by Tim Smedley. Lastly, please make plans to join us next Wednesday for Who Owns the News? Rebuilding Trust and Local Voices in a Fractured Media Landscape, right here at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. Thanks you, everyone. We could not do this without you, and have a great afternoon.